You are standing guard outside a sealed stone chamber in Alexandria, and behind that door is the most dangerous woman Rome has ever faced. Not because she commands armies, but because she still controls her own mind. For 7 days, you hear her footsteps echo across marble, calm and deliberate, as if she is already rehearsing her final act. History will later call this a tragic suicide. But what is unfolding here is something far colder. A slow, calculated psychological execution designed to erase a queen without spilling a drop of Roman blood. The chamber is sealed, and you remain outside, a Roman guard posted to ensure that the Queen of Egypt does not escape her fate. The sun scorches the palace walls, but inside the corridor the air is cool, heavy with cedar oil and the weight of history pressing in from every direction. Cleopatra has been locked behind that stone door for days now, and yet what you hear is not panic. No sobbing. No screams. Only the steady rhythm of footsteps across polished stone, the soft whisper of silk brushing marble, and her voice, low and controlled, speaking as though an invisible court still stands before her. She speaks like a ruler who refuses to acknowledge defeat, even when she is utterly alone. Cleopatra is not just a queen. She is the last pharaoh of Egypt, the final descendant of a dynasty that once rivaled gods. She has negotiated with emperors, commanded fleets, and bent the fate of nations. And now, Rome has decided she must disappear. But not quickly. Not cleanly. What is happening inside this palace is not an execution. It is something far more deliberate. The story most people know begins and ends with a snake. A basket of figs, a peaceful death on a golden bed. It is a story crafted to feel poetic, almost merciful. But stories like that are not how empires operate. Rome did not conquer the world through romance. It conquered through control, humiliation, and spectacle. And Cleopatra understood that better than anyone alive. What unfolded during these days was not about how she would die, but how she would be broken first. Rome needed her alive, not out of mercy, but because her body still served a purpose. Egypt had fallen, but back in Rome the war needed justification. Romans had slaughtered other Romans, and that truth was dangerous. Cleopatra was the solution. A foreign queen. A seductive enemy. A villain onto whom all guilt could be placed. But Cleopatra was too complex for that role. She was educated, multilingual, respected even by her enemies. A living contradiction to Roman propaganda. And so, the strategy shifted. If she could not be simplified through words, she would be simplified through suffering. Stripped of dignity. Reduced to an object. Paraded as proof that Rome had triumphed not over its own ambition, but over a dangerous outsider. The destruction of Cleopatra did not begin with poison or a blade. It began with patience. With locked doors. With silence. And with Rome waiting, certain that no human spirit could endure what they were about to unleash. The true collapse began on the first day of August, 30 BC, inside a tomb Cleopatra had built for herself near the temple of Isis. Thick stone walls, towering doors, a place meant to protect her legacy. Instead, it became the setting for its undoing. Inside, Mark Antony was dying. Betrayed by false news that Cleopatra was already dead, he had fallen on his own sword. His blood soaked into the pale stone floor as his strength faded. Cleopatra was still alive, barricaded above him with her two most loyal attendants, Iris and Charmian, surrounded by treasure meant to fund armies or by mercy that would never come. As Antony's body failed him, the women hauled him upward through a high window using ropes, scraping his armor against the stone as his blood smeared the walls. He died in Cleopatra's arms, believing his life still had meaning, believing he had fallen as a Roman defeated by another Roman. He never knew the trap had already closed. Cleopatra barely had time to grieve before Octavian's forces surrounded the tomb. Yet no battering rams came. No soldiers stormed the doors. Octavian did not rush. He sent a single man, Proculus, with a calm request. Caesar wished to discuss surrender. He wished to discuss her children. Cleopatra negotiated through a narrow opening in the stone, demanding guarantees, buying time. And while she spoke, ladders rose against the walls. Soldiers entered through the same high window that had admitted a dying Antony only hours before. They seized her before she could reach the hidden dagger at her side. As they dragged her away, she screamed that she would not be taken alive, that she would not be paraded. But the orders were absolute. She was not to die. Not yet. When the doors of her palace chamber sealed behind her, Octavian's real strategy began. Egypt was now his, but Rome still needed a story. Civil war could not be celebrated. It had to be reframed. Cleopatra would be the foreign corruption blamed for Roman bloodshed. But she could not simply be killed. She had to be displayed. Cleopatra knew exactly what awaited her. She had seen triumphs before. She had watched defeated kings dragged through Roman streets, humiliated before cheering crowds, then quietly strangled once the spectacle was complete. She understood that her living body was more valuable to Octavian than her corpse. And so the next 10 days became a battle fought entirely inside her mind. Octavian separated her children, placing them under guard, letting uncertainty do the work of chains. Messages arrived carefully measured. Your children are safe, for now. Their fate depends on you. Each word was chosen to tighten the cage. On the third day, architects arrived. They did not speak to her as a queen. They measured her shoulders, her height, the weight of her frame. When she asked why, they told her the triumph display had to be built to her exact dimensions. They returned again and again, discussing her future cage as though she were already an object. Her children's laughter drifted through palace gardens she could not reach. Reports of their tears followed. By stripping her of control, by forcing her to survive on hope alone, Octavian sought to dismantle the one thing Rome feared most: her will. By the 7th day, Cleopatra stopped eating. It was the only control she had left. She chose hunger as a quiet refusal, a slow withdrawal from the role Rome demanded she play. Octavian did not rush to stop her. Instead, he escalated with precision. He brought her eldest son, Caesar Ion, into her chamber. The boy begged her to eat, his voice shaking as he told her they needed her alive if they were to survive. In that moment, the cruelty became personal. The threat was no longer abstract. It had a face she loved. She ate that night. On the 8th day, Octavian finally came to see her. He offered mercy, carefully shaped to sound like dignity. If she agreed to walk in the triumph willingly, without chains, he promised her children would be spared. It was a perfect lie. Caesar Ion, the biological son of Julius Caesar, could never be allowed to live. His existence alone threatened Octavian's claim to power. Cleopatra may have wanted to believe him, but she was too experienced to trust promises spoken by conquerors. For 3 days she lived suspended between hope and dread. Then something shifted. Whether through a whispered warning or an overheard conversation, she understood the truth. Caesar Ion would die no matter what she did. Her cooperation would not save her children. It would only turn her into Rome's final spectacle. With that realization, the path narrowed. She asked to visit Antony's tomb one last time. Octavian, convinced her spirit was broken, allowed it. Under guard, she entered the stone chamber and retrieved a small clay vial she had hidden days earlier. Not a snake. Poison. Quiet. Reliable. Final. When she returned, she was calm. She requested a final meal. A basket of figs was inspected and approved. The danger was already in her hands. On the morning of August 12th, the guards opened the door and found silence. Cleopatra lay dead on a golden couch, dressed in full royal regalia. Iris was already gone. Charmian, dying, adjusted the queen's crown with trembling hands. When asked if this had been done well, she answered that it was extremely well, and fitting for a descendant of kings. Cleopatra denied Octavian his living trophy. But Rome still claimed the story. An effigy replaced her body. A statue. A snake. A lie that endured for 2,000 years. Caesarion was murdered weeks later. Her surviving children were raised in Rome, trophies of a conquered kingdom. Octavian failed to break her will. But he succeeded in conquering her legacy. And so, what remains is not the question of how Cleopatra died, but whether choosing the manner of her end was the last power Rome could not take from her.